Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Minh here, and today we are going to a recap of the FIDE World Candidates, which is happening now in Toronto, Canada, and this is round 2. So, first of all, I need to say first that I cannot be able to do only games, but then, this round is so interesting that I cannot resist but need to do one recap. All the games I think are pretty short, so I will try my best to cover all the games here and analyze things in depth. If I talk so fast or if you find things not so easy to follow, feel free to give me some feedbacks and I will try and make it better in the others recaps. Sure. So the first game we'll go to is the game between Hikaru Nakamura and Vidit Santosh Gurusrathi from India. Just actually a very small detail, but I root for Fabi personally in this event. If Fabi cannot win, I wanted to root for Vidit because he was the player that I drew against last year, like literally 7 months ago. We drew in the Asian Games in China 2023 in a classical game, in a classical game. I was black. So the fact that if he could win the event and he could be the world champion, and then I drew world champion in classical like nearly a year ago, makes it very, very good, isn't it? Actually, it's like a nice feeling. So let's start with the game right away. So in the game here, Hikaru played e4. It was white, but it was black. e5, f3, d6, okay, bishop b5, f6. The backline variation. This will not be the first backline game you see today. In fact, you will see a backline game later on. I think between Ipomniachi and I think Andreza Firouzja. So in both games, the players play d3. They don't go for the main backline variation like text, but they play d3 to defend upon e4, which is, I think, a much better attempt to go for the win. As I mentioned earlier, so in this event, only winners count, right? So most players here, I think, will try and play with positivity and will try and win the games, since only wins here matters, isn't it? c5 in the game, c3, Castles. I'm pretty sure in the game between Alireza and, I'm not sure, like Nepomniachtchi against Alireza, they play d5. But that is another variation in the game. So it was play d6, h3, knight 7, d4. This move 8, and it is still open in theory. So the main line here should be 6, This is the main line of this variation. And I think group e1 is the thing, or this one is also a thing as well, which I will fully expect Hikaru to play. I think bishop d3, and then here, and then rook e1, and then some kind of slow and long-term maneuver, which is typical idea in this type of variation. When the game, Vidit went for a very surprising move, and I think it's like a new move here as well. c6. I think this is a new move that surely has been prepared deeply by Vidit for sure for this game. So here the question people may own ask is that, okay, so the bishop's hanging, right? So why couldn't want it to be the bishop? I think that is also what Hikaru wondered here in this position. Here he spent 7 minutes to the bishop b3, but I guess that take here, black can just take on b5. To the pawn, he played knight g6, and then the pawn here, in fact, is not that strong. Black can play bishop here, rook c8, and try and go for the pawn here later on. Also, knight e8 can always be a try, right? Bishop g5, for instance, just play here, and then the pawn always seem to lack, I think, defense. Somehow, actually, I think black is okay here, and I think after some thought, and also Hikaru didn't want to get into Vidit's main line of preparation. He tried to avoid that by playing bishop to d3. Here back home, and here Hikaru went for a long thought. He thought for 25 minutes before taking the pawn on e5. Somehow, so here I assume the main things are rook e1, you know, and you play knight to g6. But I guess that it will get the game into, you know, some kind of, I mean, pretty normal thing again. Like here, for instance, right? And f1 and then like this kind of maneuvers, which I guess Vidit should also be fully prepped against that. But in the game, I suppose that Hikaru just like, okay, why couldn't see the pawn, right? So in the game, he thought for a while and then he decided to grab the pawn on e5. Takes. Knight e5, understandable. Obviously, when you say A, you should say B, right? Knight e5. But now, here come the move that I think make Hikaru stun. Bishop h3, exclamation mark. We did went for a bang right away. And obviously, I think Hikaru was very surprised to see this move, right? I guess both of us would be as well. The thing here, I guess, is that why should play g3, and the main idea of black is queen b8, right? When knight c4 allow black to win right away with this and knight g4, right? Also, knight f3 is not a better alternative since it also allows queen g3 here, queen h3, knight h2, rook a8, and the pin is the games, isn't it? King g1 also allows knight g4, and then I think white is basically busted, right? So somehow in the game, Hikaru, but still I think the main line is the bishop f4, which is indicated by the engine. So this is the way to regain material, and here, and f4. But I assume that even in this variation, Vidit must have something up to his lips, in my opinion. So in the game, Hikaru played knight c4, which sadly is a slight mistake. Bishop b4. So basically, this is the first time Vidit spent a long thought. He's thought for 80 minutes before playing this move. I guess that, so this is a thing that he clearly was not prepared for, and in general, so he got fully surprised with this, right? So in the game, g4, take the queen on d1 with some sense. Queen c2, 7, retreat the bishop, and attack this diagonal by his own sense. e5, and d7, attack the pawn. So here, I take the pawn on a7, okay, shit. Somehow, so even though white is a pawn up, it's not looking easy for him to really prove the things. Somehow, so the best type of engine I can tell you is very hard to be found for human. This is queen e4, f5. It seems like win material, right? But then the idea here is to keep up the bishops. This, queen h4, and then go for this one, and things obviously is very, very hard to be found, you know? In the game, so you can retreat bishops, d3, but then like play b5 in the game. Chase it with a knight, knight e3, knight e5, win a pawn. And here things already looks very, very good. I think at this point, I think Hikaru must be super disappointed about the opening income. It is almost 17 now, and he is, I think, worse. Due to, I think, some space here, black is much more active as well. He got much more pieces in the game, and things must be very good for him. The main thing here that the engine suggests is knight g4, and then maybe like queen e2. But even here, I think black will also be very happy about his position. He is, I mean, white has the bishop pair, you know, but he is so much slow in development, and black can go for many things here, like d5, for instance, rook e8, you know, f5, all kind of things. Queen f3, f5 never works, you know, never works. And black is just having so much activities. In the game, he can play bishop e2. So just f5 here right away, defend the bishop, and also prepare to expand in the king side. Things in fact looks already very annoying. f4, chase the knight. I guess this is what Hikaru count on, but sadly here Vidit comes up with a super strong move. Bishop b6, exclamation mark. Give up the knight, you know. But sadly, the knight here is just very, very bad. Knight d5, and the pin, I think, decide the game instantly. Somehow no more pieces can be used to defend this one, right? Queen d3, queen g5 is never fun. King f2, f4 is not fun either. And things here I think are close to that. So in the game, king f2 was play. But this one, although it is like a creative defense, but it doesn't work. The d5 in the game. Which one? King g8. Knight f4 is the threat, you know? g3, knight e3 is also dead loss. So somehow the queen can invade, and this is basically over, right? I don't know. I mean, earlier, like queen e4 actually is a thing, you know? I guess actually is a way to try to defend things better. But then I guess that the whole line is kind of hard to be seen and to pick in a real game, in my opinion. In the game, at this point, take a knight here, but then h5, right? Now I think it is kind of sure that it's over. Basically, the only way to defend the knight queen d3, you know, just allow knight f4 when the knight here also drop. Queen here, just like I think rook d8. I think so. Go for the attack, or just even easier, like maybe knight e2 with this threat. Queen here f7 doesn't work, and then now it can be seen clearly that white pieces now will just fall apart, right? Fall apart. In the game, can you run away? e3, the bishop, g4, queen g4. Take the pawn is actually wrong due to it allow white some chance to go for activities, right? Which should never be done. Never be done. In the game, so text queen g4, e3, the bishop, queen b3, just like knight c4, you know. And then his position still very terrible. Queen e2, queen g2 check, queen f2 allow knight c2, right? Or even queen e5. When white loses material and his position is still very terrible as well. In the game, queen d2, rook a8 checks, c1 and queen g5. This is basically over. The threat is simply run right away, and white is basically helpless with it. What can you do? The threat, for instance, like knight f1, knight g3, right? Rook e1, knight g2, lose material. Rook g1 seems like a nice way, but knight c4, you know? And this is also super terrible. You can see the difference between white pieces and the black pieces, right? And I think you can see easily here that it's over. Also, knight e2 also runs to like knight c4, you know? When here, so there is a very typical idea, rook d1, rook d2, and rook d8. When it is also reasonable, isn't it? So it actually is over. In this game here, so basically he played b3, and f1 happens. He resigned. King b2, knight g3, and the rook here drops. Now white's down change, but sadly it's not the worst thing here. The worst thing is that somehow he still need to deal with his development, you know. He cannot get these two pieces out and lose the pawn, rook may invade, and things are so terrible. So he could resign, which obviously was a very surprising result of the game, right? The fact that you are white and you lose against the backline nowadays is a pretty rare thing in high level chess. But for me, I suppose that he messed up his opening preparation a little bit, for me. But still, I think big credits for Bidit, who finds some nice ideas here, and then I think he created some nice stuff in the game. So, big credits for him, right? So, next game here, I have is the game between Prag and Wukesh, two Indian youngsters, and also, very promising talent and prodigy of the world, right? So in the game, Wukesh was black, and Pragna played for the Catalan variation. g3 bishop e4, c3 dc4. This line, in fact, is already pretty rare. Like, it's not something that people play a lot in high level, you know? But it's still a playable thing for sure. g2. In a game, so Wukesh went for a variation that includes, I think, grab a pawn and try to defend the pawn on c4. So here, a3, e7, and e4. With this, I think you can see already, right? It show clear intention that Brock want to play for the win. He is double pawn, but he got a strong center, and he can try to push later on. A6. Typical idea in this line. B5 can be done later on, right? Should E3. E5 makes sense. Queen E2. Should B7. On still looks very natural, in my opinion. 81. Knight E5. Move the knight away from D5 and also take the pawn E4 as well. White can play knight E5, but I think black can just play queen E8 and then rook D8 and like prepare like C5 in the future probably. So in the game, Lukash decided to mess up the game fully. D5. Went for the pawn push and decided to open up the center. Takes E5. Instead of trying to play like I think ED5, you know, go for I think this kind of situation. I think Lukash, I mean like Prague wants something different. He wanted to go for some I think very strong activities and kind of play. E5 in the game, knight E8, only square available, I guess so. Knight G4, just like I think bishop F4, you know, when the pawn actually is weak, and then H3 in the knight is in trouble as well. So in the game, he played knight E8, E6 here, see right? Instant activities. This here I think may lead to bishop F4, and the pawn here will be in big trouble, right? And I think it gives white plenty of activities. That's why I think in the game Lukash just avoid doing that. He played F5. Avoid taking the pawn. F6 is I think a bit odd here, which I think allows something like let's say knight to H4, and this one is next. This pawn is unattacked, right? But here, for instance, knight F5 can be a thing, or even queen G4 with a strong attack in the king side, isn't it? So in the game, F5 was played. F5. Here, so you can see in the clock as well, Prague is already up by 1 hour and 10 minutes, right? Which looks very promising. But now the thing is like how he can try to use the time initiatives. In the games, knight E5, knight F6. Queen C2. So here, Prague spent 40 minutes in this move. This one is a position that is extremely hard to evaluate. Black is up 2 pawns, but obviously he got some pieces that doesn't look very strong. The knight here, you know. Also, this pawn can be a strong passer. Also, the bishop here looks a bit passive as well. But in the meantime, the pawn here is weak, and white doesn't have like a collateral right away to the black's pieces, isn't it? So it is in general a very tough position here to trying to evaluate. So in the game, C2 was played by Prague. Here, I'll take the pawn on F5. I suppose that if we play here, better like maybe like rook E1 or go for like bishop here as well, for instance, which I think is the main idea of this move, C2, which I think provoked G6 in my opinion. But in the game, Lukash had different ideas on his mind. C6 he played. Defend the pawn on D5 and build up a pyramid pawn structures, right? Which is looking pretty funny. In the game, so Queen F5, Queen E8, get a queen away from the E file, making total sense. Knight F7, the knight looks very well placed here in this square, but then you need to understand like, okay, it doesn't that much, right? So I think at this point, Prague start to go a bit, maybe, like he didn't have a really clear plan to proceed, maybe. Somehow here, I'm not so sure what's the best way, but I think a logical follow-up may be like G4, I guess so. When knight E4 can be met with Queen F7, when it can win you a piece, win exchange here, although I'm not fully sure how I can try to evaluate this position. But I guess black is fine overall. The pawn is hanging soon, and then black can start pushing the pawn here. But it is obviously a super double-edged game. Somehow, what I can say here is that Prague kind of failed to find a way to justify his pawn's sacrifice, right? 2 pawns, I mean. In the game, Knight F7, I think Lukash can take here right away. I think which is the most easy solution, you know. Takes here, and then now I think all of White's initiative is gone. Black can try to regroup his pieces. Knight can also be brought back to him as well too, and then like d4 later on, you know. I think Black can be very happy here. But in the game, Mukesh just like, okay, why should I, you know? He trying to bishop c8 first. Put pressure on the center. e1, maybe 7, and he bring back the piece to the game. And now Prague must act instantly. If not, I think Black can be able to obtain replay right away. So in the game, it's not surprising to see this happens. g5 first. He wants to eliminate the knight here before going for knight d5. Full open up the game. One surprising thing I can show you that the engine here indicates that the best way to play is rook d5, you know, which is a really, really hard move, you know. You give up a full rook away, but takes. But here, so the thing is that white has so many activities. This one can become a threat, and you have so many threats available, you know. Take the knight here, bishop d5, and although white is now a full rook, Black are so damn passive, right? And he couldn't move at all. This one can become a threat, for instance, you know. And this is a super interesting position, to be honest, to take a look. Like I'm gonna show you like a very fun line here, for instance. Let's say e5, you know. Bishop to e4 can be a thing, and queen e5. This is the death, right? If you play something like, I don't know, maybe just knight d8, this one can also be a threat. Like, basically, this one is a very annoying thing here to be met. Bishop f6, I think, allow maybe knight g5, you know? And this one is also winning for sure for white. So in the game, he plays bishop g5 here, which is, I think, a much more human move, I guess. a7, ready to get the rook to defense. And in the game, what happened is very understandable. Takes, bishop d5. Both players now, after 23 moves, they start to get to some scramble, and the game now get to a super interesting part. Takes, knight d5, b7, obviously, defend the bishop, queen g4. So here, the only way to play for the engine is very, very hard. Things like knight a6, you know. This one, keep up a free knight again, king here, and go here for repetition. Take here, queen g4, and queen d4. Although you are down 2 pawns, the engine indicates full equality. Rook a8 allow e7 when the pawn here makes a very strong impact on the game, right? But also the main line like knight d8, queen a7, and then knight e6. For me, this also looks very unclear in my opinion. So I think it's still actually will be so damn interesting to see if players can find this thing, you know. But yeah, it is incredibly hard, especially when you're so down in time. In the game, queen g4 was played, makes sense, knight d8. But sadly, now so Mukesh was able to bring his piece to defend, and it's not easy now to make any real plans work for him, right? Knight d8, bishop d8. It was pinned here, e7 doesn't work, so queen d4. Rook b7, a simple move. And then here it seems like, okay, Prague fails to make his sacrifice works, right? In the game, so rook e4, activate the rook here and prepare doubling things as well in the e file. But then bishop f6 here in the game, queen e3, bishop e7, block everything. And now the plan is simple, queen c6 and bishop here, you know. And somehow it's not easy to deal with it. So in the game, h4, queen c6, h5, and h1. And in the game, somehow Prague resigned in just 2 moves. Queen g5, bishop here, a6. He went for some, desperation, but sadly, it is not really a threat, right? So in the game, take f2 and Prague resign. I think it's simple. H1, rook f5 is kind of dead, you know. It's gonna resign over right away when things here are dead in this diagonal, and somehow white attack comes to an end. So this one I would say is like a very nice display from Mukesh, who was under pressure for on the game, right? But he can be able to defend it, refute it, and then got away with a win, right? Nice play and resourceful play from Vukesh. Next game, a game between Nepomniachtchi and Firouzja Alireza. Once again, a very interesting fight between, a player who had won candidates last 2 times and one of the best. I mean, I don't think I can call Firouzja a youngster anymore. He is 21 years old right now, but still very young, right? So, if in the game, so we get another Berlin variation. Here, this game, so Alireza played d5. Takes, c4, queen d8. In the game, so both players just go for a long theoretical battle, which if you want to take a look at, you can try and take a look at the chat.com explore. So at this point, it's just opening theories. e7. So you can see, right? Alireza just play very quickly here. And Ian as well. Push the pawn to defend b5. a4. a5 here, attack the pawn on d3. Queen c2. Once again, a natural one. Now d5 here, bring it to f4. Now e4. g4. Pressure on the bishop 9 f3. Now d2 allow knight f4, which I think is the main idea of Alireza. But this is the main line, so no wonder that Nepomniachtchi knows something here. Queen a2 in the game, queen a2. This line was also played, I think, by Rabalivasev, I think like 2 years ago. Against, I think, in Rushden, so also a high-level game. So obviously, I think players should know this game for sure. And again, now here, should be 3. Give the pawn away, right? Which seems to be, a surprising thing. So here, queen d3, I think, allow knight g5. When suddenly there come an attack to the pawn, right? I must play here, and here, and then f4 can be a try. When it seems like white is having a very annoying attack on f5, right? So in the game, bishop f3. g3, queen d3. One thing seems natural. But somehow here the main problem is that, like, somehow queen d3 is the first move here. In that game, queen d7 was the thing was played. In the game, considering how fast the player is playing and it's move 17, it is quite clear that they are prepared, right? Okay, h2 defend the pawn. White is now a pawn, and his king looks a bit weak as well too. But it's not easy at all to put pressure on the king, and then white has bishop pair that has some kind of long-term prospects, right? So in the game, queen d7, d1, queen e8. Okay, h4. So now it is the time that players start having, I think, play on his own. Let's take a look at the position first. White is down a pawn. In the meantime, he got a good attack here in this diagonal. He got a strong knight in the center. He also got, like, I think, a pretty reasonable bishop pair. Black has a safer king, a pawn up, but his knight pair of knight here looks a bit useless, and his pieces here are also a bit cramped. So that's why the engine give full equality in this position. Although, to be honest, it is not that easy to evaluate, and I think for me it is more or less a double-edged game, in my opinion. So in the game, h4, a very interesting one, right? I think the main idea is to offer Firouzja a pawn. But the here is very annoying. Rook 1, and then white can suddenly launch an attack on the h5, right? Just open right here, bishop e7 for instance, bishop e7, but like maybe queen c2, and suddenly they come a threat. But this one for instance, right? g6 here is that fun here, which allow queen d2, and this is over. This one here just allow this move, and white can crush in. So that's why the pawn here is so damn risky. Nice see it. Obviously, with his caliber, I think Firouzja understands that he needs to bring the knight back to home, back to the game right away. h5, king h8. I think it is now once again a very double-edged situation. Obviously, why want to play h6, right? So the question here is if you should try to defend that, or you're trying to allow him to do that, open up the g5, right? So the engine think that this is a better choice. But here in the game, what Firuza choose is very understandable. Like I think I would do the same as well if I were him. Like, you can try to go for here and here later on. So it seems like also a very understandable move, in my opinion. So in the game here, push the pawn, g5, yep. We need to take the pawn, knight d6. Obviously, take the pawn here, allow take and rook g8, right? When we got a skewer. So in the game, b2, be prepared to put pressure on this diagonal as well. But for me, this move is a bit hard to explain. I guess c4 is the only thing I can see here, but still, this is actually a pretty mysterious move by Yan for sure. So in the game, b2, knight 5. Attempt to attack here the square. Queen e7, go for the queen trade. Although normally you don't want to go for the queen trade when you're double pawn, but here, so white has some long-term prospects, so he's willing to do that as well. h4, f1, f5. Activities confirmed. Knight g3. So here, if you allow white to carry f on 2, he will play b5, and c4, which is his, I think, threat. Bishop here allow mate instantly, right? Bishop f6 also may allow, let's say, maybe just queen c7 and go for the pawn here, or just like queen e8 and go knight h5. So this one, I think, is a position that I think somehow Yan is slightly better. It's not full easy now to go for a choice. I guess maybe at this point, I think Alvarez should go for maybe a safer choice, like maybe f6 first, and go for here, in my opinion. But yeah, I guess for Alvareza, we don't want to defend passively, which I think we can understand, right? So in the game, let's go to g3, knight f3, b5, as I mentioned earlier, f4, knight e4, and here, so knight e5 in the game. The way my sense, bishop here, activities against, right? So here, the best move of the engine is very, very hard. I think it is g4. I guess the idea is like bishop g4, allow knight h2 with threat of the bishop, right? Also, it appears a bit odd to me, like what is the threat of g4, in my opinion. So once again, a very engine looking move in my opinion. So in the game, sadly, he's so down in time. He's so down in time here, right? He went for an inaccurate defense, which once again is something I can understand, but doesn't work here at all. Queen 6. He went for the activities. Queen e7, Queen e6. Here, obviously, rook e8 allow Queen g7, right? When now white appears here and he can slowly convert it. Rook can invade here as well, and the knight here is very, very misplaced, right? So this is still looking very, very good. So in the game here, we got Queen h6 right away by Alireza. f7, trying to tie up the black pieces, and this is so damn annoying. Queen here, rook here is a thing, right? Rook e8 doesn't work. In fact, this is not the best move by the engine, but it is such an annoying move, right? The engine claim this is better, but I think this is a much more annoying move here, especially when you're so down on time, right? Like when you're down on time and you see your opponent pieces sneak into your game, it is highly annoying, right? So Queen h3, e2, Queen f5, King here, g4 is his ideas, but sadly, this one can be played right away. d5, cover the things, e8, b7, draw the pawn. So here, the opponent should just show like his bravery and just like click on the things he wants without any fear at all. g4, d3. The king here is surprisingly safe, and black doesn't have enough resources to attack. Rook d8, c4. Simple move. Also, go for meeting threat, right? Rook d5. Here, with h3, knight g3. Once again, a safe choice to convert, right? To be honest. Take here, just take here, and you can take on the pawns you want to, and go for the queen trades, isn't it? So this is obviously completely lost. So in the game, knight c4. Ali is trying to defend creatively, but doesn't work here at all. c4, H3, H3 in the game. AB5, take here. Okay, so now both sides got like more than 30 minutes more. But this is only dead loss. The king can run to here anytime, and it is clear that black doesn't have much at all. Rook C8 in the game. We need 4 to H1 first. Which is a nice move, right? A nice intermezzo. Rook here, Rook H3 is obviously lost. Queen F5, Queen E4 doesn't do anything at all. And in the game, Queen D7, Queen E4. Queen B5, actually he didn't play here, but even here, you know, it doesn't create any kind of threats. Considering that this is also a meeting threat, you know. So in the game, King G8, King E3, Ready 4, takes, and he resigned. Here, so after all threat is now gone, and now here King D2, and now this king is safe. And the queen threat can be done like whenever, and this one is also a way to finish the game, right? So, another decisive game. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Nice play from Ian as well. I think Alireza is kind of well prepared, but then, you know, the middle game was so hard to play precisely. That's what I can say. Last game, we got the game between Fabi and then Nijat Abasov. Let's go. We got the Sicilian. Nice. F3. This is okay. The slump should be E5 and E5. Okay. A training line is nowadays. So this should be D3. I mean. Now F6. Let's see 3. Gasos. H3. Okay. All actually are fairly normal, so it's not so surprising. This. Look here. So H3. A6. Should here. I think this is like the opening variation, right? If I wasn't mistaken. Maybe I think the main line here, I think is something, I don't know. I think that's actually pretty rare. I'm pretty sure the main line here at this point is to try something different. I know this is a thing that actually was playable earlier, but in fact, so in the game, I was a bit surprised to see what is going on, in my opinion. You know what I mean, right? Okay, in fact, so I don't know why, but actually my page is, I think now, just didn't work at all. Okay, let's do the game again, I guess, so we have no choice. One moment, guys, let me try to do it here very quickly. Okay. Here now. Great. Back to the game. So here, I think the main line here is, at this point, I think is like, it's right away. Also, knight c3 is also a very rare choice. This is something I think more common here. I think was played by Levon, so this should be more common, I guess so. But obviously, Fabi is always so damn well prepared, right? He should have some ideas on his lips. Up on his lips. In game here, h3, push, bishop 6 the pawn, we can take the knight, we can the structures, right? Take with the d pawn, in some sense as well. h4, we f3. Common ideas here, tbh. Push here to defend the knife ideas right away. g5, should be 7. Things still seems to be quite safe, right? Queen e3, knight 5 right away. Go for the bishop trade. On seems to be natural at this point. Takes. Knight 3, b6. I think our sub is still playing pretty well here. a3. This is the ideas, right? Normally, in this situation, normally the way to deal with it is like a5. Normally, with a4, just take it right away, right? It's not really a thing. So in the game, I must play something different. b5. For me, a relatively rarer idea, and this makes this pawn become a slight weakness. So for me, I don't really like this move in my opinion. But okay, I guess it's actually a playable one, right? So in the game, knight 2, f6 here, we find a pawn and prepare for the knight to be relocated. Knight d2 should be here actually. I guess that he never had this at the beginning. This one put the knight here to defend f4. f4, yep, takes. Here, rook d8. Actually, I think black is doing good here, in my opinion. Somehow, this weakness can be easily covered, and c4 can actually be done. I'm not so sure if white can really do much, in my opinion. In the game, I think Fabi now need to find a plan. In the game, he tried b4. At first glance, it seems to be a pawn sacrifice, but obviously take here doesn't work, right? When queen b4 can be tried, and this one, and now you lose a crucial pawn, and now your king is in big trouble. Also, e5 can also be tried, you know, when things looks not fun either. So in the game, I think I also can play c4 in my opinion. But then I guess this pawn structure looks not so fun, isn't it? So I guess that in human point of view, it's not easy to choose this approach. So in the game here, he plays cb4. Take here, wait. Prepare e5, a5, right? Makes some sense. h1, a5, makes sense, right? b5. And now I think this is coming to a point that I was most surprised. In the game, he plays c5. Like, I don't know why don't take pawn a5 though, which is the main thing. I guess here he is worried about e5 and knight e4 by white, but I think after b4 it should be fine, right? I don't know. I guess that here, so he doesn't want him to come to d6, but I don't think it's gonna do that much, in my opinion. Like, just like king g8, you know, run away from the pin here, and this is the threat. I guess it's okay. But here, I don't know why he didn't go for this approach. He plays c5. Still allow white this pawn alive, right? Which make it, I think, not easy to defend at all. a1, defend the pawn. a6, trying to cover this rank as well. e5 in the game. f5, obviously, you can't allow it to be open. c4, makes sense. Now, b4, knight b3 is a huge portion of mistakes, you know, which allow white to just slowly push and attack this weakness here as well. So in the game, bc4, dc4, and a8. In fact, it should be equal here. Then b3, g5, queen g3. But here, so I think I must find a very important move here to play. I think rook b8, with this threat, right? So I guess rook, if rook run away, the pawn drops, right? If they not run away, you got here again, which I think forced him to return to b3. And if he played the main, I think, tricky variation, which is this, queen c5, queen g5, king h8, I guess so. Here, f3, get f4. Which I think still keep things, I think, under control. f4, he got queen f8, and queen f4, he got like maybe queen e7. But I mean, it's not looking too bad in my opinion. In the game, he played a6. So rook f2, run away, d4, and suddenly now I think this pawn drops. Abasov now went down one time, and here he made some terrible mistakes, I think so. He allowed white to attack in the f-file. In the game, I think which can surprise you that it finished in just like, I think, literally 3 more moves. This must be play, but f3 here, and white should still come h, right? Like here, I mean like here for instance, but this still is not that easy to play at all anymore. So in the game here, he play should be 3, which allowed the queen to get active, and this is already very, very annoying. He's now a pawn, his king is weak, and it's not fun to try at all. In the game, so he went for a pawn on a5, but sadly, the rook now get activated, and this is over. Rook a7, allow e6, you know, and this is still the same threats, right? The king here is so much weaker than the counterparts, which is the main problem. So in the game, he played king h8, and f7, he resigned right away. Sadly, the no defense. Queen e5 allow rook f8 when mate is on the way, right? Queen e8 allow, let's say, e6, and here mate is also hanging at this point. If you play, you know, queen d8, something like, I think queen c2 is also, or like even queen b1. Looks very, very good, right? When things are basically the same. And it's over. So I think Abasov played a good game. He was on for a long time, but then he still allowed things to go wrong at the end, I think, after 10 scrambles, right? So, what a great event. we have witnessed like 4 decisive games today, which I think promise us a very interesting events in front of. And I think it's gonna so damn interesting to see how things can be, right? Let's take a look at all the games later on, and hopefully you enjoy my commentary and my recap. Thank you there, and we'll see you later. You can follow my YouTube channel later on, and feel free to give me some ideas and feedbacks. Thank you, and stay safe. Peace.